Well, hi Reggie. Thanks for helping me with my project.
How you doing, Nathan? No problem, man. It's a pleasure.
So, Reggie, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yes, I'll do that. My name is Reginald Lee. I am an IT program and project manager. I actually had the pleasure to work with you, Nathan, when we was at Hewlett Packard, and not only work with you, I actually got a chance to share office with you. And I don't know if you remember, but you were instrumental in one of my biggest wins early on in my career at HP when we actually added functionality to what we refer to as the DCCP tool, and we was able to capture notes real time, pretty much in the actual tool. So that was awesome, man. But now it's good to talk to you again, man, and reunite with you.
Yeah, it's good to meet up. I mean, that's one of the things I really like about this project is it forces me to who can I connect with today, and it's like just that little bit of push to
Oh
kind
man,
of get out there and reach out and reconnect with people.
nah, that's awesome, man.
Um, so the first question I like to ask people is, did you know that NASA is planning to land people back on the moon in 2024?
No, honestly, I did not know until you reached out to me, right? Had no clue. Honestly, thought NASA as a program overall was basically canceled, right? That was my assumption that the funding had got so limited that space exploration was pretty much to a nil.
You're not the first person that I've talked to that said that. Some people really, NASA really kind of dropped out of visibility for them. And I'm
Yeah.
sort of, one question I wish I asked them that I can ask you is, what was the last thing you remember that NASA did?
Oh man, the last thing I remember, what did NASA do? They had just sent some ladies to the space station, I believe, if that's what I recall. We were sending quite a few ladies, and I don't know if we had a mission where we sent all ladies, if I recall that correctly. I think that was us that was sending a crew of all ladies up to the space station.
And uh, when do you remember this happening?
We So for me to remember that, it probably happened. Let's say that happened maybe the last 5 years, maybe.
Okay. Well, there was an all-women event that you might be thinking of, and that was the
Okay.
first all-women spacewalk. I was just
Okay.
wondering if that might ring a bell.
It has to be something with it. Was that NASA and was that the U.S. that was doing that?
It was, yeah,
Okay.
two American female astronauts did a spacewalk, and that was, I think, like October, November of last year.
Oh man, so more reason. That's why must be why I can remember something of it, right? I just remember it was a big significance because it was an all ladies deal, right? And one of
Yeah.
the first times that we've done that with pretty much more women being in the crew.
It was there was actually some controversy around it because the spacewalk had been planned earlier, but they didn't have two spacesuits that were small enough to fit two women. They had like a
Wow.
man and a woman spacesuit, and so
Okay.
they had to replace one of the women with the men first, and it was like a huge controversy about you know uh, why do we have that and stuff. So that was kind of
Totally
interesting.
get it, man. I mean, we're constantly in transition, right? When it comes to the gender deal, as more women are taking more leadership roles, being more involved. Uh, yeah, I'm not surprised though, right? You're talking about a science field, engineering field, where women for years have been trying to break down barriers and really move in those fields, and they've been making contributions for years, undoubtedly. But to actually be in the forefront, it's only been a recent, really, and I say recent meaning probably of my lifetime. So maybe in the last 20 years recently that you've really been seeing that move where you got women CEOs, women actually been in the forefront of not just being an afterthought as one of the astronauts, right? Maybe the lead scientist in one of the missions, right? Or one of the lead doctors there. So, and it's only really been one when I really think about it. When you think about those crews, right? Even Challenger that blew up. I think I only remember one lady on there, Krista McCullough, that was on there. So I'm not shocked at that at all, that they only had one suit, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you know that movie came out a couple of years ago about called Hidden Figures, about the women
Yep,
that were part of the you know
the
the
launch
space
to the
program.
moon.
Exactly, and
Yep,
kind of, I mean, it's kind of funny, you know, computer used to be a job title.
yeah, yeah. No, that's right, man. And man, I love that movie. I really love that movie. I made sure my kids went to see it too because shit, I learned some things on it, right? I didn't know, right? I knew there were a lot of ladies back then that actually made contribution, and African American ladies, but didn't know to that extent in the mathematical area, right? That they were actually the computers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, right. So no, that was awesome, man.
Um, so, you know, one of the things about us going in 2024 back to the moon is that we're going to be landing the first woman on the moon. The last, we had 6 different landings on the moon, each with 2 white men.
Yep,
So 12 white men landed on the moon. And this is going to be the first woman landing on the moon. And I've talked to a number of people. You know, some are really excited about that. Some are like, well, if
yep,
she's qualified, that's good. But I mean,
yep.
what's your take on that?
So when I think about it and I hear you say it, the first thing I think about is why is that a big deal today?
Mm.
Right? Really, should we be saying, hey, we have the first? I think once we get away from saying first, right, I think we're really going to start making progress in the country as a whole, right? From my experience, it's always the first black guy to do something or the first African American to do this, right? And now it's we're going back to the moon. And my first thought is, why are we going back to the moon? Like, what's the significance of going back to the moon, right? Are we putting something there? Are we building something there? You know, are we trying to see if life like what's the real purpose of going? And not necessarily that, hey, whoa, we sending the first lady to the moon. That should have been happened, to be honest with you, right? So I hate that it's that big of a significance that we're sending the first lady, but I am happy at the same time that we are making advanced strides, right? That we're actually trying to show younger ladies and the younger generation of women that, hey, whatever was done in the past by all men, hey, you guys can achieve it too.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, some women that I've talked to, and even the two that did the first all-female spacewalk, they're like, you know, it's good that we had this so that we get past it, you know, so that
Yep,
there's no
yep,
longer the first, and we're just not thinking about it. Nobody's going, oh, well, do you realize you were the first? You know, it's just like,
yeah,
don't put me in that box, you know.
exactly.
I'm
Exactly.
just
Hey,
an
I was an
astronaut.
astronaut that went to the moon to do something, right? More so than them being the first. So I asked you, man, why are we going 2024? What is the main mission? What's the purpose?
Yeah, so you know, there's many different reasons to go back to the moon, and depending upon who you talk to and kind of like what motivates them, they're going to emphasize one reason or another.
Okay.
But from my standpoint, some reasons that make sense to me is first of all, just learning about um, uh, what the moon has to tell us about the Earth. For
Okay.
example, a lot of asteroids are constantly hitting the Earth, you know, meteoroid,
Yep.
and most of them burn up in the atmosphere. And the ones that don't burn up in the atmosphere, most of them land in the ocean. I mean, the Pacific Ocean is literally half the globe, you know.
Yep. That's right.
And then the ones that do land on land, you know, they get weathered and cratered, you know, I mean, you don't know that they're there several hundred years later, right?
Yep.
So if you wanted to get some good data about how asteroids have been hitting the Earth over the last, you know, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, million years, what have you,
Mm-hmm.
that data can't really be gotten from Earth itself. But
Gotcha.
the moon has been traveling with the Earth, being impacted by the same types of things, and it has no
Gotcha.
atmosphere, so they don't burn up. It has no weather, and those asteroids are just right there. So that's sort of the first one. The second reason is sort of a philosophical one, and I wanted to ask you if what you thought about this. But if you
Okay.
go out like 500 years, do you see like humanity only on Earth, or do you have the thought that humanity is going to expand out into the solar system? And what do
So
you think?
I find it interesting. I don't know. I've thought about it before, right? Because you hear about everybody want to get to Mars, right? And they talk about life on Mars. And then I think about our small life span, right? And is that something that I think I would be interested in? I don't know if I would want to be interested in going to Mars, right? Why? I don't know, right? But part of me is kind of interested in to see somebody go up there, right? I would like to have insight to see if somebody can go up and what does life on Mars really look like, right? Are there real can people really live on Jupiter and Saturn and different things like that? Or are there things out there that we really don't know, right? A lot of us that are spiritual, you pray to a higher being, and a lot of the religions believe that the higher being kind of created what we see here on Earth. So it has you to believe that there's something past the sky that we could see, right? Right. But I'm not sure, even myself, that I'm so interested in really seeing it yet. I think it's the unknown, the scaredness of the unknown, that may bring a little fear, right? And actually knowing what really truly is out there, and if there is something us as a human more powerful than us, right? We tend to think we are we're the end all be all, right? We're the top of the food chain here. So that's just a whole nother thought. So me personally, I haven't really given a lot of thought about actually leaving Earth. As a child, I actually thought about being an astronaut at the time, just to kind of go up there and just to be able to see that view back down to Earth. But as I got older and realized what it took to be one,
No.
I was like, well, nah, I'm gonna go another route. So I respect them to the utmost. Some of the smartest people we will ever run into. And no.
Yeah, the ones that can stay the most calm under pressure for sure. Also,
Yes. Yes.
so that brings me to another question. Let's
Okay.
say going into orbit, and experiencing weightlessness and seeing
Yep.
like Earth and the blackness of space became affordable and safe as airline travel. Is that something that you would consider doing?
Probably yes and no, right? So I think it kind of goes back to a personality deal, right? So I'm gonna give you a little history. I have an accounting degree, right? So I say that to say that there's a conservativeness in my nature, in my being. Um, so I think yes, if it's as safe, like they would have to prove that to me, right? If it's as safe as traveling to and for as we do on the airplane, and we can go up and back at a decent interval, right? Yeah, I would to go at one time, at least one time.
And just to kind of probe your tolerance for safety.
Yep.
So let's say 1,000 people had safely gone to orbit and back without any type of incidents. Would that be a high enough number for you?
So 1,000, I would say yes, but then on top of that, I would probably need some curiosity from my kids. As of right now, that fuels a lot of things for me, for things that I hadn't seen or want to try. The fact that I want them to be exposed to much greater things. If one of my kids really was like, "Dad, let's do this," I would have to muster up whatever's inside of me that's holding me back to say, okay, to really research it a little bit more and see if we can make that happen for one of them, as them being some of my inspiration. So 1,000 would be something I'll start looking into, right? when we think about 1,000 in the scheme of things, or the number of the people here on Earth, like that's really small. That's a real small sample size, right? And the people who actually are flying every day that says, hey, air travel is safe, and people who's driving on the road that say cars are somewhat safe, 1,000 is a small sample size. But I would consider, like I said, but I would have to still be nudged a little bit with just 1,000.
But I guess where does that nudging go away? Is it like at 10,000, 100,000, a million, 10 million? Like, at what point does it become like so
I'm just gonna do it.
common that you don't even think about it?
Yeah. It's definitely gonna be more than 1,000, right? It's gonna, for instance, I'll bring it into today's world that we're in now, right? To say pandemic that we're
Hmm.
dealing with now, and if only 500 people or 1,000 people died, I don't think nobody would really view it as a pandemic, right? But the fact that we have over, I think it's 1 million cases of the virus we're dealing with now, and now we're into I think thousands of people that died. I don't know the exact number per se, but I think in the US we're over 15K now today. So worldwide, I don't know if we're in what, in the 50, 60,000, even higher than that. Now you start getting people attention, right? Even though you have 1 billion people, or more than 1 billion people on Earth, when you start hitting some of those tens and hundreds of thousands, oh, it really, I think that's the threshold, right? Between 10 and 100,000. Start hitting in those numbers, I think you start getting people attention. And especially if people are doing it not in just one concentrated area, right? It just can't be a US thing. We have to see people doing that in other countries too, that I think brings some of the comfort level, because I think we get some of our guidance from other countries, right? Right. We're not
Yeah,
always taking the lead.
yeah, indeed. I mean, like you see China really picking up in space activities, and
Yeah.
Russia and India and Japan and Europe. It's a
Yeah.
lot of people. Um, well, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything in closing you'd like to say?
I'm gonna just thank you for the opportunity of reconnecting with you, man, and having a great conversation with you about something that I had no idea was still as active, right? It actually brings a little concern to me, in the sense that I need to do a little research to see why in the heck are we going back to the moon, or are we putting Big Brother up there? Like, what are we doing that we're going back to the moon, right? And hopefully it is some of the things that you talked about, and that's the main part of the mission, so that we're just gathering data more on our current environment. But if it's with the world changing as it is, I'm kind of curious now. You struck my curiosity, man, on why the heck we're going up there in 4 years. That's pretty quick, right? Right. And
Yeah, it'd be.
I think it's almost a facade to say, hey, it's the first lady. I think that could be a distraction, right? I think it's more to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. I
Yeah.
mean, in order to get something as big as this with enough support, you have to give a little bit to a lot of people, so a lot of
Yeah.
groups. So,
No, I get it, man. But it's been a pleasure.
but thank you so much.
All right.